Hello, everybody. Good morning. My name is Dan Treiman, and I'm the CEO of NEIBC. NEIBC stands for New England Israel Business Council. We are a not-for-profit organization with the sole purpose of connecting Israel and New England business-wise. We believe that the business connection will make the world better. I would like to thank the panelists, Stasia, Mora, and Itamar, as well as the moderator, Karen. And without further ado, Karen, the floor is yours.
This is the first time I'm actually moderating a panel and not participating in one. We'll cover really exciting topics today. We'll look at funding in women's health. We'll look at data bias and what an early stage company needs to succeed. We'll also look at some support opportunities from local HMOs and where we're strong and weak in terms of innovation in women's health. I'm really excited to introduce the panel here, Stasia, Mara, and Itamar. I'm going to say a couple words about each, and then I'll ask each of the participants to introduce themselves and their venture, and then we'll go into some questions. So first, I'd like to introduce Stasia Abramsky. Stasia is the managing director of RIA Ventures, an impact venture capital fund investing in innovations in women's reproductive health. Stasia sits on Ocon's board, and she's an investor in Ocon. So I do have a bit of knowledge of the background, but she joined RIA back in 2018 as a founding partner after more than 25 years of experience as an interim CFO for startup companies and as an impact investor and philanthropic work she's done in women's reproductive health. Stasia also holds an MBA from Harvard, and we're very excited to have her with us. So Stasia, thank you for joining today. Mara Rosenfeld is the Chief Business Officer of MindUp, the digital health incubator. MindUp is a joint venture of Medtronic, IBM, Pitango Venture Capital, and Rambam Medical Center, and they work in collaboration with the Israeli Innovation Authority. Mara is proud that MindUp has one great women's health company, Gina Life, and is working hard to add more. I know that personally. Last but not least, Dr. Itamar Netzer is a medical doctor with two specialties. He is an OBGYN, but also a medical administrator. He's a Navy veteran and formerly worked for the Ministry of Health and Medical Device Regulation. Currently, he's a sub-district medical director in Israel's largest HMO, Clalit, and is also the innovation director for their second largest district. If I may ask, I will ask Stasia, then Mara, and then Itamar to introduce themselves. Just a word about me. I'm the CEO of Ocon Healthcare. Live, work, breathe women's health for the last couple of years. I'm excited to be here and talk a little bit more about opportunities in this space, investments, and as I mentioned. Stasia, please go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's nice to be here. I am dialing in from the Bay Area in California, although we do have, my partner Elizabeth Bailey is based in Boston, so we have a stake in New England as well. I would like to share my screen, if that's okay, Karen. Can I do that? And just talk a little bit about the FemTech field broadly, and then RIA's role in that ecosystem. So I will.
Go ahead, can you?
Yeah,
share?
yeah, I think I've got it. Let's see. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So let me go back one. Okay, so again, nice to be here. So I want to talk a little bit about just some trends in the FemTech sector, as we call it, or the women's health sector. Really, 2021 was a landmark year for FemTech. A little over $2 billion was invested through venture capital into various startups. There were over 270 deals in the space. And we saw really growing size of deals. We had the first unicorn in the space, and that's a company which has a valuation of over $1 billion. That was Maven earlier this year, as well as larger deal sizes in some of the early companies, as well as a growing number of exits and a growing interest by strategic pharmaceutical device companies who literally for the past 10 to 15 years have divested or sat on the sidelines of the women's health business. And while we do see a lot of activity in the space, the deals are mostly small and early. And just to put it in perspective, all of this capital, this $2 billion plus going into the women's health sector only represented 4% of all venture investment in healthcare. So we still have a long way to go. We are excited about the trend. I went to a conference in Boston in February, and someone said, this is such a nascent area. We're really just on the beginning of the curve. And the next speaker said, you know what, we're not even on the curve yet. And I tend to believe that sentiment. On the right are just some interesting statistics. This was actually compiled by my colleague, Alice Jung, while she was at McKinsey & Company. She joined us earlier this year. And it really is an attempt to try to quantify what we're seeing in the women's health FemTech space. And again, just a number of graphs looking at articles published, number of startups founded, number of deals done, and of course the capital that's flowing into the sector from 2008 to 2021. So you can see there's some good momentum here. But it's always curious to me, like, why now? It's not like women are a new technology and the market is just realizing, that we have are an innovation. And I think there are three reasons why we're seeing more excitement and more activity in this space. And I really think that it can be summed up as follows. I think there's growing representation of women in VC, although we still make up a minority of venture capital, and we control a minority of dollars deployed in venture capital, but there are more and more of us. And obviously, as women, we have an awareness and understanding of women's health issues and the many unmet needs in this sector. And lastly, we're just seeing a tremendous amount of women entrepreneurs who are recognizing these unmet needs and really stepping in and starting companies. And we have companies or entrepreneurs like Karen, who took over a business that was not succeeding and really turned it around. And we're seeing other entrepreneurs step into white spaces and find innovation and try to move them to market.
Stacia, are you trying to move your slides?
Yes. Are they not moving?
They're not moving. No, dear.
Okay.
Sorry to bother you.
Okay. How about now?
Yes, now they're moving.
Okay, terrific. Thank you so much. I'm working on two screens, so I'm never quite sure which screen is working. All right. So again, just the 3 points. When we see women in VC, we see women aware of the issues, and then we see more women coming into the space. So into this ecosystem, Rhea Ventures stepped about 4 years ago. The firm was founded in sort of 2018, and our goal is really to invest to advance reproductive and maternal health, the betterment of all women, while delivering financial returns to investors. And as Karen mentioned, we call ourselves an impact firm. And we don't think mission and money are inconsistent. And we think we can have broad public health impact as well as successful financial returns to our investors. And I'll talk a little bit more about what we mean by impact in a minute. But we do this with a team of women-founded, diverse group of women. As I mentioned, my partner Elizabeth Bailey is in Boston. We have 3 other colleagues who support us on this effort. And we really look through the impact lens first when we're evaluating companies, because we're looking for 4 potential impact pillars. One is, does the company or technology address access for underserved or marginalized communities? In the US, that often means, do they have a strategy to access the Medicaid market? Medicaid births make up 50% of births in the US. So if you're in the maternal health space and you're not thinking about how to get your product or service to the Medicaid sector, you're leaving a lot of market on the table. The second is, we're looking for transformative innovations in the health for women, not just incremental changes. We're looking at affordability, either both to the patient and both to the system. And lastly, we're looking at systemic change. We know that women are often discriminated against or see bias in the system. So we're looking at solutions which might address those issues. Again, as I said, we don't think that mission and money are inconsistent. And over the last 3 years, we've built a portfolio of 12 plus companies. And we invest in companies both in the US and outside the US because we feel that innovation can be found anywhere in the world. As in addition to our investment in Ocon in Israel, we have 3 companies in Europe. They're working on innovative technologies. But all of these companies have to have an eye towards bringing their technology to the US in the near term. That's really an important criteria for us. And because we invest fairly narrowly within the women's health sector, we tend to invest broadly across the healthcare segment. So we have pharma, diagnostics, medical devices, consumer products. And you can see on the right, our portfolio is made up predominantly of maternal health and contraceptive innovation, but we've also found great companies meeting unmet needs in feminine hygiene, oncology, and STI as well. I'm going to just share our first 12 investments. As Karen said, Ocon was our first investment in our Fund 2. And we've added to that since then with 11 other companies. And we think they both have important health and public health, but also potential broad impact metrics for each of these companies. I'm not going to talk about each one of them. I'm happy to share more information later, but just want to also point out that for us, inclusion matters. We think equity is very important in this space. And we are committed to investing in diverse teams. And as a result, 70% of our portfolios are led by women or people of color. We're very proud of this portfolio. And we're excited to continue on this path. I'll stop there. I'll just maybe make one final comment on, someone had asked a question about what is it like to be fundraising as a woman in this space. And we're in the process of finalizing the raise for our second fund. It's a $30 million fund. We have about $26.5 million committed. And we've been doing this for about 1.5 years. And the good news is over the course of that time, we've seen a growing interest in the sector, and we've seen more exits, and we've seen more larger valuations, which again, just helps raise the visibility of the sector. But fundraising is, as Karen will tell you, is a challenge. We sympathize because we've both been in the market fundraising, both for our fund and for her company, almost since we've known each other. So we share a lot of stories about what that's like. But we are seeing, again, more and more interest. We've seen more and more women with capital come forward and show an interest in supporting this effort. So we're encouraged by the trends we see. So I'll stop there. Happy to answer any questions at the end, but thank you so much for allowing me to join.
Stasia, thank you so much. Mara, please go ahead.
So as Karen told you, I'm the Chief Business Officer of MindUp, and I'll tell you a little bit more about MindUp in a minute. A little bit about me. I actually started my career over 30 years ago, as a lawyer, but luckily I've been rehabilitated since then. And I moved into business development in the healthcare technology space, which I love. It's nice to get up every morning and think that you're doing something to help make someone's life better. I'm actually talking to you now. I'm in Pittsburgh at the Innovation Center of Allegheny Health Network. So it's something I really look to do everywhere I can. But I have to say that I really hope that women's status would advance a lot farther from the time that I started my career, which I haven't seen happen. So now definitely one of my priorities is doing what I can to help advance women's health. So a little bit more about MindUp. We invest in and cultivate early stage health ventures. Almost all of our ventures, the common thread, it's a variety of things. They usually have some aspect of data that's very strong. We're looking for things, obviously, that can impact the cost, quality, and access to care. We're a pre-seed investor, and we're looking to invest. We're usually the first money that a company would see. Typically, a startup, the team is about 2 people. And we're focused on de-risking, of course, the technology and the business. Here in the background, you can see some of the strong women at MindUp who work with me. As Karen mentioned, we're a partnership of IBM, Medtronic, Rambam Health Campus, and Bitanga, which is a VC in Israel. We also work very closely. It's a program that's under the Israel Innovation Authority. That means we can only invest in Israeli companies. But it's a strong program. The companies receive about $700,000 for a 2-year period. And we work very closely with the teams to support them in their product development, their business development. For some of them, it's the first enterprise. So, management skills. They have offices in our office, and really helping them try to reach out. Obviously, we're very focused on the US market, helping them reach out to significant partners in the market. If it's healthcare systems, investors, strategic partners. MindUp's been operating since 2016. And I think if you watch us, we see quite a few of our companies have been raising money lately, and I hope they're really going to make a big difference. And one thing I wanted to talk about, often when we talk about women's health, we think of only solutions that are something particularly for a woman, whether it's physical or mental health or both. But I think an important point to remember is that when you're looking at something you're doing for a general healthcare solution, are you taking into account both genders in your design and the data that you're using? I think that typically gets ignored, as we can see the history also of things that have been developed for whether it's devices, and typically often mentioned in women's cardiology, where the devices are designed for the male anatomy, data that's based on male subjects. Also, are you taking into, as Stacy also mentioned, are you taking into account the ethnic groups that you're going to be looking at? Recently, we had a project that presented to us for something for stroke detection. And the company has managed to do a small proof of concept, which is admirable. But the entrepreneur mentioned that, well, actually, there was a difference in the results between the men and the women. And I started to ask, well, what's the reason behind that? How will you account for that? How will you deal with it? How will you account for other ethnic groups? Because this had been done in Israel. And I think it's important to realize this isn't just something that matters to me because I happen to be a woman or because I'm looking at innovation. This is now becoming a business risk. The FDA is looking at this. As you already heard, investors are looking at what's sometimes referred to as ESG, environmental, social, and governance criteria, which is very strong in Europe, growing stronger in the United States, and even the Israel Innovation Authority is now adding this to the criteria that they use to evaluate startups in the incubator program. So again, it's no longer nice to have, it's no longer just something that sounds good socially, it's becoming a business need to address these issues. As Karen mentioned already, I'm very proud that we have one company in our incubator, Gina Life, which is working on early detection of ovarian cancer and other indications in women's health based on the analysis of vaginal fluids. It's a strong company you're going to hear a lot about, but I'm not satisfied with that. We're definitely looking for more companies to join our portfolio. So if you're an entrepreneur with something in women's health, please contact me. I'll be happy to hear about it. And again, even if it's something in general health and we can do something that can help the entire population and not just half, we'd love to hear about it. Thank you.
Mara, thank you so much. That was wonderful. Itamar, last but not least.
Hi, thank you, Karen. Let's show my screen here. Right, okay. So good morning again. My name is Dr. Itamar Netzer. Just a few words about myself, in addition to what Karen has said. I've known from an early age that I would like to be a gynecologist, mostly because of the huge potential I saw for promoting women's health rights through that profession. Unfortunately, we also know the opposite is true as well, but I try to do my best in the right direction. My love affair with medical technology begins in the Israeli Navy, where I was a fleet surgeon and had the opportunity to work a lot with digital transformation in healthcare and with advanced platforms at sea. The Navy is a very technological core. Moving on to the Ministry of Health, where I served in the National COVID-19 Control Center at the beginning of the pandemic and working in medical device regulation. And right now I'm a director for Clalit, which is a very large HMO. I'm going to talk about that in a bit. And I manage about 50 clinics for 220,000 Israelis. And I manage innovation for my entire district, which spans about 600,000 people. So Clalit is Israel's largest healthcare network. It provides care to close to 5 million members with more than 52% market share. It should be noted that we may not be the largest health organization in the world, but we are unique in that we do completely cover insurance and care in our facilities. So we have 14 hospitals, more than 1,400 clinics, and we operate the largest share of Israel's hospital beds in our hospitals. And of course, affiliated with all faculties of medicine in the country. The data warehouse in Clalit, this is true for the entire country, of course, in the other 3 HMOs, but we do have 100% coverage of a single electronic health record in all our community clinics and hospitals, and we have a centralized data warehouse with both clinical and administrative info dating back about 2 decades. So this is probably one of the largest data warehouses for healthcare in the world, which we use extensively both for our own researchers and in cooperation with other companies. In terms of women's health in Clalit, our women's health clinics are in all medium-sized and major cities. I have 2 in my own sub-district and 7 in the whole district itself. And these encompass all stages of women's gynecological life cycle, from adolescence to menopause, with everything in between, with high-risk pregnancy, cervical health, fertility, sexual health, etc. And our community hospital continuum is strongly based on a very large continuum within the same organization, but even sometimes we have the same caregivers. Gynecologists work both in hospitals and clinics and are involved in research. And this is one major unique characteristic that is rare in other places. Most of our work with startups in digital health and in the medical device field are done through more research and application, which is a sub-affiliate of Clalit, and acts both as our tech transfer and foundations administrator. Just to give you an idea of the basic portfolio, I'm not going to go into any of these names, but you can see a lot of companies, both very mature ones, advanced stage companies, incubator stage and pre-seed. Most of these come from our own researchers and clinicians. And of course, a lot of them are companies that come from the outside and enter Clalit and enter more application for the development. And of course, we have a lot of cooperation with academia in Israel and outside of it. So we mostly deal pretty much with everybody, large tech companies, pharma and medical device, various stages of startups. And in terms of our types of cooperation in this field, we can go anywhere from providing data to helping with analysis, joint R&D. Of course, clinical sites is something that we're very proud of. We have a huge plethora of clinical sites in every field, but especially in women's health, because as I said, we do have our own women's health centers. And there's various compensation schemas for working with companies. So I'd like to say right now, we're doing everything we can, really pushing to bring in FemTech companies and companies in women's health, not just in gynecology, which is my specialty, but everything that pertains women's health as well. And we're looking to provide, we don't see Israel as anybody's final market, of course, but we hope to do good both by allowing our patients to get the benefit of advanced technology and helping companies promote technology to the rest of the world. And this, we see this as a win-win situation, and especially right now with women's health, which is a field that is very ripe for advancement and development. And this is a vision that is shared by the various levels of administration in the HMO. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Itamar. I appreciate this insight to Clalit. I want to start with a basic question, and this question kind of runs through Stasia and Mara, but I think Itamar could also weigh in on it as well. One of the basic questions I want to ask is your thoughts or maybe insights on the appropriate funding or funders versus the stage of development of each of the different companies or startups. Obviously, the low-hanging fruit is that Mara does the pre-seed and maybe Ria Ventures would do a later stage. And in between, they could also use the help of an HMO like Clalit. But if you could give a little bit more insight on what you are looking for. You mentioned drip to stream momentum. And what's really driving the growth in the FemTech interest a little bit more? Stasia, if you could start, I would appreciate that.
Sure. Again, I think it starts with the technology or the science, and where is it? Is it still in the lab, in an academic center? Has it been spun out into a company, new company, or joint venture company? We often see technologies that are literally just leaving the lab. And, in that case, they've been able to access a lot of grant funding. In the US, the NIH provides discovery funding for some of these innovations and some of these researchers. Once they leave the lab, there are small business types of grants, SBIRs, that some companies can apply for. And, as an investor, we like to see that as much has been done to de-risk the technology as possible, even though there's still a long product development process to get to commercialization and a lot of risk still left. And it's going to take a lot of capital to get from bench to bedside, as we say. But we like to see, a robust and often non-dilutive capital help that, particularly if it's a technology which lends itself to that. Services less so, but certainly biotech, device, therapeutics can lend themselves to that kind of capital. So, we often take over at the seed level at our fund. We invest seed, Series A, B, and we like to have seen some grant funding. We like to have seen some peer-reviewed articles, which has sort of validated the science that's coming out. And then we're willing to put our capital in to sort of de-risk the technology to the next stage. But we have to always be thinking about who we're going to hand this off to. Just like the product development process has multiple stages where you kind of hand off from preclinical to clinical to formulation to manufacturing. The capital formation process also has a lot of these critical handoff points. And from grant to early stage equity is one handoff, then later stage equity. But we like to see that sort of life cycle and capital cycle of the company. And again, you need to match the capital to where the company is in its development cycle. And that's very important. And if there's an opportunity to apply for non-dilutive grants, and Israel has a very robust and rigorous government funding mechanism, which is unique and very valuable, you should be going there first to see what's available there.
Okay, Mara, could you add in to that and specifically talk about also what your experience is with some of the assets that these companies should probably attain before starting to look for capital?
Okay, so, and again, we're usually the first investor they're meeting. So we're looking, it's a very early stage. We're looking to see at least they have some kind of proof of concept. We get less into deep biotech. That's also not our strength of our team. And we don't have the facilities. It's also something that requires a lot of money. But we do look at things that they do have sometimes, even though data is core, some aspect of biology, or it could be hardware as well. There's some kind of, basic proof of concept. And I also like to say, I want to see proof of concept of the market. Did you talk to someone in the market and not just in Israel? Because let's face it, we're a small country. That's not a major market. So who have you talked to? What kind of validation have you managed to get so far? Obviously, it's something you continue the process. Actually, it's something you need to be doing all the time. But it's something that gives an idea that there's actually a real need for what you're doing. Again, we're looking to de-risk and help them get to the first investor after us. It's a long road after that, especially in healthcare where you have regulatory issues that you have to overcome and market acceptance. That's also a lot of the reason why we're looking to help them partner with leading healthcare providers in the United States, so they have actually a potential customer working along with them and giving them that feedback.
Thank you. Itamar, could you shed a bit more light on what resources Clalit may give to early stage startups, especially if you look at financing opportunities or any databases that are available for these startups to kind of tap into?
Well, first of all, I mentioned this before, but our data warehouse is pretty much unique, being probably the largest such database in the world that encompasses people in all ages and stages of their life, and has been following up with the same system for 2 decades. So as far as Mara mentioned, coming to their first investment with proof of concept, we can really put forward a lot of data resources that can bring to light any sort of clinical phenomena that we wish to investigate on different levels, be it local or national levels. And this is a very robust way to get going with both needs identification and trying to see what sort of data is already available, and probably doing a lot of the initial surveys and work before coming in with a solution. Secondly, as I said, as far as clinical fields, there are plenty of that. And of course, there are a lot of clinical fields in the world, and we know that a lot of companies actually opt for developing world countries to get cheap trials in. But I think that we give the best value for money in that respect, having very robust, not just data, but CRAs and so on. More importantly, I think, is that Clalit is also a very large financial institution and is very interested in this sort of business. And so there are a lot of funding opportunities working with Clalit. As I said, this can go anywhere from giving you services and data, and as much as even investing real money, of course, for the same sort of prices and commodities that you would expect to pay in other places. But I think it's possible to strike very good deals and even non-diluting capital as well.
So Itamar, just to clarify, Clalit would invest equity or invest in non-dilutive grants or give services for free for later a stake in the company, or all of the above?
Well, yes, all of the above. That really depends on what stage the company comes in at and what the company, how much it's already funded and what it's looking for. And of course, this is something that is not only typical of Clalit. You can see the major hospitals doing the same thing with their tech transfer offices. So yes, this is for medical device and digital health companies, this is a very viable route to funding and to commercialization.
I think what's so, sorry, I was going to say, I think what's so attractive is you've got such an integrated system, right? So in the US, our system is so fragmented, so we don't follow patients from primary to specialty. But in your case, you are the payer and the provider. And so you have access to sort of a continuum of care and a continuum of data and providers who can work nicely with a company. In fact, I'm thinking of several company in my portfolios I might send your way when they're ready for clinical stage.
Yes, I would say that's exactly true, because we do everything where really the whole organization is a one-stop shop. We can do everything inside our own organization. We do have a little bit of outsourcing in some areas that are most scarce in Israel, such as pediatric neurology, stuff like that is scarce in the whole country. But almost everything is in-house. Both medical and what we call paramedical professions, such as physical therapy, speech therapy, and so on. We basically do everything and keep everything on file. And we have our own facilities that can deal with any sort of clinical trials and development that is required.
Okay, we don't have a lot more time. We have about 15 minutes left, but I do want to ask a few more questions. As Stasia knows, I have one job, and it's other than being a head slave, it's just raising money. That's all I do. I don't work. I just raise money. We have expensive hobbies at Okan. But I do want to touch a little bit about the value add in funding through investment firms like Ria Ventures and like MindUp. And Itamar, of course, feel free to tap in. But Stasia, if you could start a little bit about what you feel the value add would be in terms of expertise, attention, anything you think that could be relevant.
Sure. So when we got started, one of our proof of concepts was, would entrepreneurs want us on our cap table, given our narrow focus in women's health? And how would they view us as an investor? And if you're an entrepreneur, in some ways, I know you'll laugh at this, Karen, but money is the easiest thing for you to get. You have so many other needs. You need networks. You need technical experts. You need a shoulder to cry on every once in a while, a sympathetic, thought partner. And so, given Ria's deep expertise in women's health and the people we know, the clinical people, the technical experts, the pattern repetition that we've seen in other companies in this sector, both how other investors perceive them and how potential strategic partners perceive them, we found it very, very helpful, and I hate to use this word, to be sort of very focused and sort of almost a niche in this area. Because I feel like, the checks we write are relatively small. I mean, we come in after Mara, who does the pre-seed, we'll do the seed or the Series A, but we're writing a $500,000, $1 million check at the most. But I think we add so much more value to the company in other ways. I think sometimes for Karen, just being a woman out there fundraising and, saying, how's it going today? I know it's been a tough week, to, hey, I have the perfect FDA expert that I can refer you to. And I think those kinds of value added, services or experiences are just as valuable as the capital. Not that the capital isn't important, but it's like yes and I'll stop there. But I do think that as an investor, and as an entrepreneur, you need more than just capital. And so having an investor who knows your business and knows the sector that you're selling into and can really help make those connections is very valuable.
Yes, I totally agree, Stasia. Thank you. I see Mara nodding her head. They're in agreement. Go ahead, dear.
So yeah, I mean, exactly what she said. We're just doing it earlier. And I think that, we're seeing, we have some of our, actually have a very nice project from Clalit that we're happy to have Blink, not women's health, but we have some entrepreneurs that are experienced. We have some, this is their first time and coming from like a scientific background or engineering. So a lot of the value there also is sharing that experience, helping them learn. Messaging is different when you're talking to investors or partners. It's not the same as preventing it, scientific work. Aside from taking away the admin headaches of like legal and accounting, but really helping with that outreach into the ecosystem, into other markets, helping them learn to present, what are the things, also helping understand, afterwards, taking a look, saying, okay, this is what went well, this is what didn't, what can we change, how can we change the message, what's going on in the market. Last week, I actually took one of our portfolio companies, the CEO, we went to some very good meetings with partners and potential pilot site. Here in the States, it was really the first time he had done a trip like that. And I went along with him. And I was really proud to see also how far he had come since he started the incubator. And this is someone who comes from a scientific background, never had any kind of business before. So it's really that strong support, and then taking it to the next and finding after that a good investor who's going to be there for you and support you. We can't put in more money, but we still be there. I still work with one of our graduate companies all the time, trying to help them reach out to the market anytime I see an opportunity. You're still we'll still be with you as we go along, and help you find investors who will do that for you down the road.
Great.
I'd
Itamar.
be happy to tie in with what more and mostly what Stasia said. I know it's there's still a lot of inequality in the uneven playing field, both for women entrepreneurs and in women's health in general. I just had this argument with my own boss, the medical director above me a few days ago, who refuses to believe that women's needs are still underserved in clinical research. He says, well, it's been corrected 20 years ago by the NIH, and I had a hard time explaining why that's not really true. And I think that not only that, but women entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs in FemTech deserve to have someone who not only understands the field and the market, but who understands what it's like being in their shoes, and the way that the women are treated in this area, and the various sensibilities that need to go into account, because a lot of men out there who try to do the same work sometimes fail miserably at not understanding the material at all, and not understanding not the patients or the developers. And I think it is very important, and it's always important to even the playing field even a little bit.
I can tell everybody from my experience, we will soon make an announcement of an additional investor, a US-based venture capital that is joining us. But this is an example of a woman that worked in a very, very big venture capital firm in the United States. Her name is Jenny. And she loved what she saw with Ocon, and she went back to her teammates, men, and they just wouldn't listen. And she said, you know what, I'm done with this. I want to do something in women's health. And she opened her own fund, and she got the state of Vermont to invest in her, and a lot of other LPs. And they will now invest in Ocon, which is fairly funny. It's almost, as Stasia said, we take matters into our own hands. We see a lot more women coming in and making an effort to put a lot of focus in women's health. I myself also mentor through 8400, and I'm always available to help with my network of investors. So anyone out there that requires some assistance into thinking when is the best time to approach which investor, I do a little bit of screening before I actually send them across also to Stasia. And we've done that once with one company to see if they'd be interested to add them to their portfolio. And so, of course, I'm available also to help. We do have maybe 5 or 6 more minutes. If anybody from the audience wants to ask any questions of any of the teammates or myself or Dan, this would be the time to do so. You just have to unmute yourself.
So Maura, I have a quick question for you. I'm curious how important having a patent license or IP is when companies come to you. Again, very early in the process. How do you think about that? How do you protect their IP? What kind of IP do you want to see before you guys write a check?
So we usually look that either they have, if they've applied for provisional, we're actually actively reach out to a lot of the tech transfer, and we can even take something and then find a team if we like something. So we do look for, sometimes they're just in the process of applying. We also want to see that they're working with a good patent firm to do that. And I'll be honest with you, and I used to be a lawyer, sometimes I wonder whether patents will really protect anybody if you don't have the money to have a big patent fight, but investors do want to see that. So it's very important to make sure that you're laying the groundwork. So, and that's often something we'll work with them on while they're in the incubator too. Mm-hmm. Our CTO does a great job with that.
Great. Anything else anybody wants to add before we sum this up?
I'll add something.
Please, Benny.
So thank you everyone for your insights. It was great and interesting. I want to say 2 things about Clalit. First of all, they have their own innovation center, which is important, and there were several ideas there in women health in the first and second and third cohort. So maybe they'll come up and become companies. The other things that beside what Stasia said about, the added value of a venture capitalist, I think for Israeli company, it's very important to learn the US healthcare system and understand it, not just to learn, to understand it, how to navigate, because quite often you're the one who is using your whatever device, drug, digital health platform is not the one who is paying for that. And it's completely different from Israel. And you have really to understand who you talk with and who are the stakeholders. It's not just your medical champion, the CEO, the CFO, the CIO. Everyone gets involved and everyone has to get his own message. And a little bit different message, because if you want to enter the US system, it's very complicated. And that's one of the things that Israeli companies have to learn a lot. And we try to help them in many ways, in many platforms, but that's very important for Israeli companies to learn, because it's a completely different system than in Israel. In Israel, you can do great clinical trials, get your data and etc. But the system is completely different. So it's very important because that's our main market, the US. And of course, Europe is much more complicated because every country is different from reimbursement, especially from reimbursement point of view.
Thank you, Benny. And just to mention that in July, we're going to have the second largest women's health conference. And actually, Stasia is going to be here together with other OCON board members. OCON is supporting this incredible event. We'll have researchers and investors and startups. And so this is an exciting event for Israel specifically, but also for all of us in the women's health or FemTech space. So you'll see a lot of noise on LinkedIn for sure. But Benny is orchestrating this and actually is the founder of this. So we thank you for that, Benny, very much.
Welcome. I'm doing it from love, really. And I really appreciate the women's health sector. It's very important to me in any aspect. So I enjoy doing it.
Great. So thank you, everybody, very much, Stasia and Itamar and Mara, for joining me and for allowing me to take this time to hear a little bit more in depth about your expertise and about women's health, and Dan for orchestrating this and continuing to push these important events. I hope everybody had an insightful meeting, and I'll pass it over to Dan.
Thank you very much, everybody. And time ran out. Appreciate the information and the insight, and I wish you a great day. So thank you.